What was your dream job when you were a child, and what are you doing now? Story 1. I used to want to be a garbage man. Riding on the back of the truck as it cruised down the street looked absolutely awesome. Then I found out how physically demanding it is, so now I'm a forensic scientist. Close enough, right? Story 2. I always wanted to be a mom when I was a child, from seeing my mom take care of myself and my siblings, plus the dozens of dolls I had. In my 5th grade yearbook, I put mommy as what I want to be when I grow up. Well, I'm happy to say I did become a mom, and it's the greatest thing I've ever done in my life. Story 3. I wanted to be an architect, or at least that's the answer I was taught to give, because I was told justice is a silly story for kids and helping people is stupid. As an adult, I decided to be realistic and went to university for graphic design, aiming to work in tech. While in university, I realized I leaned pretty hard towards urban planning, so I was in the process of getting into grad school for a master's in architecture. Then life happened, and I became a full-time human rights activist. I do justice and I help people, or at least try. Story 4. I told my middle school, then high school guidance counselors, that I wanted to play video games for a living. Mid-2000s. I was told, repeatedly, and with much sneering and smugness, that video games aren't a career. My Twitch and YouTube channels started taking off, and it really feels like the job I always wanted is a real possibility. Story 5. Wanted to be a writer, but quickly discovered that A. I'm not talented enough. B. Getting published is an absolute slog. C. I like steady, predictable income too much. So I ended up figuring out how to make writing and the ability to read lots of boring text every day into a career, and became a technical writer. Story 6. Dream jobs were paleoanthropology and anything in the medical field. Being in the Marines for a decade and a couple times in combat gave me irreversible brain damage, so the future doctor in me was out of the picture. Tried going to college after military for anthropology, but found out I couldn't retain information as well as I thought. Started traveling to find a purpose and fell in love with someone and made a small family. Story 7. Dream hash 1. To fly. Dream hash 2. Take pictures. Result? Became a helicopter flight engineer, saw the world, no regrets. This led to a job in the aviation aspect of the defense industry. It is soul-crushing. Wish I was still flying. Also picked up a camera again about 8 years ago to offset the soul-crushing aspect of the other job. I am now a published landscape photographer. Story 8. In Europe before rail automation, there was a job of kind of a traffic warden. Wikipedia says rail flag man, but that's not what I mean. That would close the road when there was a train coming on the rails. They would station, or even sometimes live, in a building where the road crosses the rail and would stop the traffic before the train. Now, in most part, this is takeover by automation. As a kid, I even had my favorite crossing in the middle of the woods. It looked especially cozy in winter. Now I work in IT, and who knows, maybe automation will take my current job as it took the one of my childhood dreams. Story 9. Always wanted to be an archaeologist. Initially, it was because of Indiana Jones, but as I matured, I also became a bit of a history nerd, so still liked it. Ended up a finance bro because apparently it's hard to pay the bills as an archaeologist for how much education is required. Story 10. Paleontologist when I was around 7. Then found out how much education costs were. Settled on primary school teacher when choosing my options. Muddled through early adulthood, didn't go to uni due to financial woes. Fell into IT through a friend and worked in first line for a while. Through therapy, I thought better of my skills and got a new job with an inbuilt apprenticeship. I now work in cybersecurity. The time between bettering myself and now has been a scant 6 years, but I've come along in leaps and bounds. Story 11. I wanted to be a pediatrician. I think it was more so I wanted to work with and help kids. I'm a school psychologist/behavior analyst working with special education youth and youth with ASD. Not quite a pediatrician, but in the hallpark of what little me wanted to do. Story 12. I wanted to be an astronaut when I was a young kid. Then I hit puberty and grew to be 6 foot, and I'm colorblind. It was never a possibility. Now I work at a civil engineering company. Some things can be really boring. Manual counts. But for the most part, I enjoy it. There's a special feeling you get when you see the result of a project you worked on. For instance, a mid-block crossing project, and you finally see whatever was decided, like a crosswalk that makes it safer for pedestrians to cross. Story 13. Computer programmer, video game developer, scientist, astronaut. I'm an IT guy, was a SIS admin, now security engineer, 30-year career so far, working on a few games, Unreal Engine and an old homebrew 6502-based system. Love science and reading more about everything all the time. Wanting to get my private pilot license, but going to space isn't going to happen until I'm dead, so I'll try and get as close as I can. Story 14. I wanted to be a nurse. The math was difficult for me. I ended up in human services management. I worked with seniors, teens, homeless, pregnant women, mentally ill homeless, and I represented people in Social Security hearings. I am now retired. It was a remarkable 30 years. Story 15, comic book artist. 80s and 90s, I loved reading comics. Drew so many comics, sketchbooks were full of them. Went to an art school for high school and proceeded to go to college for a BS in fine art. While in college, I got a job in aviation manufacturing that paid for my college tuition. Started at the bottom, then worked my way up. I'm now a quality engineer and do art for fun. Story 15. I always wanted to be a writer, and I became that. I've written 3 novels, still in early drafts, plus a collection of flash fiction. I've hosted creative writing classes, and I've shared my work on podcasts, magazines, and online. But unfortunately, none of that pays well. So right now, I'm working in a store, saving up so that I can pursue my dream full-time. Story 16. I wanted to be a pilot. Flight school for a commercial license was way too expensive, and minor hearing damage meant I didn't pass the medical for military flight school. Ended up becoming an aeronautical engineer instead, though I currently don't work in the aeronautical industry. Having talked to some airline pilots, I think I ended up in the better position for me personal. The good parts of being a pilot still sound fantastic, but for me, they don't outweigh the negatives. Story 17. Wanted to be a life scientist and started working towards that goal as a young teenager. Science fairs, lab experience, etc. Currently in the final year of my PhD and staring down the reality that somewhere along the way my dream became my obligation. And I'm in a spot where I don't love the work anymore. I'm good at it and I can be paid for it, so I'll probably stick to it, but it is sad to lose the dream. Story 18. I wanted to design and build theme parks. I even would build things in my cousin's backyard because his dad was a construction laborer and had a ton of random material. Babysat a lot and would build things indoors as well. Did teaching after college, along with political and nonprofit work. Now I work in construction and real estate. It's honestly awesome because I'm building a business and hopefully one day soon we can bid facilities at a theme park. Loli. Story 19. I wanted to be a hacker because I saw the movie when I was 7 and thought those are the coolest people ever. I now work in IT, network engineering for a cybersecurity company. There's not nearly as many rollerblades and trench coats as I was promised, and none of my coworkers look like Angelina Jolie, but other than that, it's pretty cool. Story 20, pro baseball player. Was pretty good in Little League in high school, probably could have gotten a scholarship to a school, or could have been a minor league player at best, but kept thinking I'd be pro level. Ended up breaking my arm pretty bad playing football and lost power in my throwing arm. I used this as a wake-up call since I was probably never going to go pro. So now I'm a programmer after going to college. Story 21. I wanted to be an archaeologist, but was told time and time again that I wouldn't be able to find work as one. So I worked to various jobs, and the last 25 years, I work as an advertising manager in various radio stations. I like it. It's okay, but I still love ancient monuments. Story 22. I wanted to be a druid. Just hang out in the forest and talk with the trees, animals, and mushrooms. Now I'm a biologist researching how forests communicate and allocate resources between species. I do talk at the trees, mushrooms, and animals, though. Story 23. I learned in my early teens that dream jobs were meaningless because no one would support you in obtaining them anyway. My parents discouraged me from every dream job I had, and they weren't far-fetched either, like a brain surgeon or astronaut. No, I wanted to be a pro wrestler or a BMX rider. I was only 12, so these things were absolutely possible back then. But every step of the way, my parents would remind me why I wouldn't be cut out for it. So I gave up on having dreams and ambitions fairly early on. Now, I'm nearing 40. I'm unemployed due to lack of childcare for my son, with 0 friends or family for a support system, and I'm slowly coming to terms with the fact that I'll never be financially secure or independent. I'm just tired of living at this point. Story 24. As a child, I wanted to be an astronaut. I grew up in the 70s. Every kid wanted to be an astronaut back then. Currently, I'm an IT technician at a Midwest public university. Before this, I was a professional photographer in California. At one point, I had a gig shooting for a small aerospace startup that was building a prototype manned rocket. They didn't succeed. That happens with a lot of small aerospace companies, but I did get to photograph all of their test flights. When they closed up, the CFO confided to me that they had planned to send me up on Flight #7 to get publicity shots. There are no swear words for the emotions that swept through me that day. Story 25, child, scientist thought I'd love it. Now, scientist PhD level, love the science, hate the people and the low wages. Gonna quit in 10 more years to be a nurse. At least when I am a slave to a corrupt system, I can at least make a few people laugh along the way. Conclusion. No matter what you like, neoliberalism, capitalism will ruin it. Thanks, human progression. This worked out great. Story 26. As a kid, I dreamed it all. That's the problem. No focus or plan. I wanted to be a vet, a nurse, an actress. I have worked as a dental assistant, medical assistant, and spent most of my career doing medical office work. It's been good. I'm still dreaming. Story 27. I always wanted to do art of some sort, be it traditional artist, make art, sell it, graphic design, tattoos, family nearly begged me to go this route, or whatever. Ended up a cake designer, pastry chef. Went to school for art, but fell into a bakery job after college, and here we are. I run my own business and also work at a secondary bakery on the side just to get out of the house a couple days a week. I get to be creative almost all day at both jobs, and I love it. Even though I grew in bakeries my parents owned, I never imagined making edible art for a living. Story 28. Real dream, Power Ranger or Tornado Chaser? Actual job, 3D artist. I did audition for the Power Rangers, got through the first round. Girl they chose for the role was stunning, so I never stood a chance. I taught martial arts for years, trained even longer and still do. I've trained with Rangers and parts of their stunt crew, have my own costumes, and I got the Primark onesies recently. I got as close as I could. Tornado Chaser. I've seen one clear funnel cloud in my life. I live in the UK. I have a science degree in geography, never used it. The art side isn't surprising. I've always been an arty person. I didn't even know 3D artist was an option until I jumped into Blender and Nomad Skull, practiced a lot, learned a lot to make custom figures. Now I make art for games, this time 3D instead of 2D. Story 29. Fashion designer. Worked as a med tech. Very satisfying. I broke the rules. We had to dress in white uniforms and ugly white shoes. I vamped up my uniform and seemed the limited choice in shoes. Added bling to my shoes and wore uniforms I designed and had them made. Ended working for the Air Force lab, but able to dress in normal clothes. I don't have to tell you what I wore, but I dyed my hair purple. Now I'm 67 and retired, but I have pink hair now. Story 30. In kindergarten, I drew a photo of some speakers and wrote something along the lines of, "I'm fixing amps." Still have the drawing with the teachers helping me write. I was big into playing drums as a kid. Throughout school during icebreakers, getting to know your classmates, I always said that I wanted to work in music. Of course, I got the, "Hey, yeah, you should have a Plan B kid" response from teachers and students. Some were supportive, though. I was viewed as a burnout kid, grew up in a broken home, skipped so much school I actually got a truancy fine. I only smoked weed in high school. Anyway, I ended up graduating a semester early, never went to university or post-schooling. After graduating, I spent the second semester off working Coachella 2009. Got a couple bites along the way, until I finally got a taste playing drums for an indie band selling out 13K cap rooms. Eventually quit and took up drum and guitar teching. I've worked for a slew of club bands, dabbled with a major composer, and now work primarily for two legendary legacy artists. I tour the world with them, 13 wires and spending the last 6 in the big leagues. I was even on a portion of the Eras tour at one point. So often I forget about it being my dream job, so this post was a good reflecting moment for me. Thanks for that. Story 31. My first what I want to be when I grow up was an Egyptologist. I went through various forms of professor, history, classics, etc., as well as unrelated things like doctor, artist, etc. I'm getting my MA in linguistics, BA also linguistics, and plan to do the PhD professor route, so not too far off of what I originally wanted to do. Story 32. Dream job, Air Force pilot. Didn't pan out because I realized I cannot blindly take orders from people I don't respect. I can't just look at a commanding officer and obey unless that person has proven to me he is a good human being. So military was out of the question. I ended up being a freelancer doing creative stuff, where I can pick and choose projects and clients that can suit my style. And I'm more than happy because I don't have to take anyone's. Story 33. As a little kid, I wanted to be an astronaut. As I got older, I wanted to be a spy or special agent kind of badass. As an adult, I'm a military veteran, wildland firefighter, and working on my FBI application. But really, now I just want to be retired and travel the world. Story 34. Wanted to be a stand-up comedian since I was like 7, then just wanted to perform. I like making people laugh. Now a SAHM. My kid and myself have the TISM, so most days I just use the creativity to figure him out and avoid any of the issues that coexist with the TISM. I do get a thrill out reading him books because I can unleash my creativity using fun and exaggerated voices, and he absolutely loves it. And I secretly do too. Story 35. Teacher. But I lived with my grandparents and was greatly discouraged because the news said there were too many teachers and no jobs for them. It also said that most of them were near retirement age, and the issue would have solved itself by the time I would be done with school. Anyway, my grandmother decided I should be a hairdresser as she believed they always have a job and there can't be too many. I am a stay-at-home mother now. Story 36. Wanted to be a forest ranger. Loved the outdoors and still do. Ended up with a good-paying Teamster warehouse job at 18. Down the road, I'm working at a production plant as an inventory analyst for the machine maintenance department. Cushy work with good pay and benefits. Been at the plant for over 30 years now and close to retirement. Story 37. At 12, I wanted to be a pathologist purely because I lived the characters who played pathologists on things like CSI. Had my own CSI case and all. Found out at like 15 that you need to be a doctor to the living first before you work with the dead. And yeah, no, I'm not to be trusted with people's lives. I don't know if that's changed where I live, but it shot my dream down. Now I work in social media management and content creation. Story 38, archaeologist, cabin crew, or teacher. Teacher was the main thing throughout my entire childhood. Went to college for early years education, and now I'm in uni for occupational therapy, wanting to focus on the children aspect, specifically those with additional needs. Story 39, I wanted to be a film director. I was a business owner for a while then that went under during COVID. Now I work in insurance. However, now in my late 20s, I'm actually getting a project going for a film. I did some YouTube comedy shorts many years ago, but stopped for a while. Now I'm diving back in and working on my first feature. Story 40, spy, policeman, or National Geographic photographer. As a photographer looking to escape the industry, don't do photography or any job where there is no right or wrong answer, and it's all down to opinion. You're basically a pinball in a pinball machine bouncing between directors, execs, and managers, and they make you think you have a say, but you don't. Also, as an in-house studio photographer, you're the canary in the coal mine in terms of layoffs, redundancies. You're the first to go. Story 41. So many different ones. The most consistent was wanting to be a writer. I've said it since I was 5, and I'm coming up to my 32nd birthday. Now, as for where I currently work, I'm at an Amazon warehouse. I don't hate it, but it's not what I want to do forever. Good exercise, though. I've lost weight and gained some strength from the boxes. Those things are heavy, lol. Story 42. I'm not sure that I ever had a dream job. Now I help sell retirement communities to old people. It makes me feel like I'm helping them have a good last chapter. I feel like I am helping in some small way. But overall, I feel like the whole I do not dream of labor thing is relevant. Story 43. I wanted to be a writer so I could travel the world and write about my adventures and the lives I'll bear witness. While I'm stuck in a cubicle not being able to live my own life except sleep. Wake up, eat whatever, run to work, run to house chores, eat whatever, sleep, repeat. Story 44. Not a job technically, but I always wanted to be a basketball player. In middle school from the age of 11 to 14, I would wake up every morning Monday through Saturday at 6 a.m. in the morning and run drills by myself until other kids came to the park to ball. I struggled playing 5-man team, but I was a monster playing 3S. In high school, I didn't have a gym to continue sports, so I let it go. Then 9/11s happened. Story 45. When I was a child, I wanted to become an electrician. I loved fixing things from a very young age. Later, I wanted to be a computer engineer, but I ended up studying cinema and television. I worked on various projects in the TV and advertising industry. Currently, I work as a playout operator in the control room of a news channel. It's definitely a job below my potential, but at least I have peace of mind both financially and emotionally. And for now, that's enough for me. Story 46. I didn't get one till I was 19 in university, who I also lost my V to, but she was awful, and it was a hasty decision without much thought. Just got swept up in it. I've not had a proper one since, and I'm 30 now. I've had long-term mutual things, situationships, and lots of hookups, so I am by no means a total hermit in that regard. But I come from an emotionally challenged family which is riddled with various types of autism. Myself having ASD, also known as Asperger's, which made growing up tough. Emotionally unavailable, unstable parents who would argue, leading to us and my mother fleeing the house regularly from my drunk and violent father. This ultimately went on for years, till it turned to domestic violence. On top of the childhood trauma, I was bullied horribly at school because I didn't fit in due to my ASD. I'd socially put my foot in it. I was fat, bad hygiene, and just a magnet for it all, really. Got beaten multiple times, constantly assaulted in clash, all of which destroyed my self-esteem, my self-worth. Forever worried about making a dick of myself. So yeah, a mix of childhood trauma, bullying, and ASD. I just struggled to connect with people and always have. Story 47. I always wanted to be a vet and help all the sick and injured animals. I work in social work now, specifically with vulnerable and at-risk children. Not the same, but the empathetic, caring nature I seem to have plays a major role in both of those job roles, I suppose. Story 48. Environmental biologist and I ended up pursuing that degree initially, transferring and pursuing a medical degree, getting placed in an internship too far from the house I just bought and the husband I just married, and switching back to a biology degree. Now I'm a social worker without the correct degree. In my experience, the jobs I took to pay for life while going to college meant more than the degree I got in college. I wish I had gotten the medical degree, which pays about 2.5 times what I make, plus I divorced the husband already. He wasn't worth the missed opportunity. Story 49 didn't really have a dream job, but I remember young me wanting to draw when I grow up. Never got into drawing or art, but recently, approximately 4 years ago, I changed industry into becoming a UI/UX designer. I do art now, but not a lot of drawing and mainly create vector graphics. It being inside of the game industry is a bonus though. Story 50 musician, whether it be in a band playing whatever instrument I decide to pursue, scoring games, films, now union plumbing. I make music still as a hobby and have been for nearly a decade now, but it never became my career, sadly. Still love the hobby though, still passionate about it. Story 51. In order from when I was 5 to 18, I wanted to be a dentist, a writer, an astronomer, a writer again, a historian, a psychologist, and finally a marine biologist. Now I'm 23 and work as a leasing agent. However, my husband has been encouraging me to go back to school to get my degree in marine biology. Story 52, I wanted to be a detective, but then I wanted to be someone that people hired to go to their house and find things they lost, keys, jewelry, etc. Then, due to always being told everything I liked was stupid and my dream wasn't real, and a lot of other things growing up which lead to being depressed as a teen and losing any ambition to do anything at all in life except hope to die. Well anyways, now I'm a department manager at a grocery store. Story 53. I used to want to be an architect, then work for a video game magazine, then a painter, which I went to school for, then to be a college professor and teach painting. Now I work for a large financial institution. What can I say? Having healthcare, a salary, and a 401k is nice, but not all that satisfying. This is what it means to be an adult, I suppose. Story 54. When I was younger, I wanted to be an engineer. Unfortunately, I didn't save up enough for tuition yet, so I'm still working blue-collar labor jobs. Currently working at a rail yard in the winter and grain bin building in the warmer months. I make decent pay and have benefits from each job. I get overtime and bonuses as well, hoping I can squeeze in a week or two of camping this summer. Story 55. After the phase almost all boys have over here of wanting to be a policeman, decided I want to be a veterinarian to help animals. I had actually given it a decent amount of thought for my age at the time. The main problem would be blood, but I'm not scared of it. Unfortunately, I would discover I hate biology, no matter how good my grades may be. Not doing anything yet, but planning to start studying it at university this September, since I like tech, computers, and everything surrounding them. Story 56. I went to Disney World as an early teen. My favorite part wasn't any of the rides. It was the Hall of Presidents. I was fascinated by their movement, even those that were in the background, while another president was speaking. I decided then I wanted to go into animatronics. Then I wanted to be in the room monitoring NASA launches. Computers were in their infancy when I started college as a CS major, and I absolutely hated coding on punch cards. I ended up getting a degree in TV production and did that for 10 years before transitioning to IT. So I'm full circle now working with computers, but nothing cool like Disney World or NASA. Story 57. Scientist, not quite there yet. Research tech applying to grad school right now, but I've already racked up a handful of publications, one in Nature as co-first author, and have presented my work at national conferences, so semi-living the dream. Story 58. Among the many dream jobs, I ended up becoming a scientist. There are things I like about it, but it's not as good as I thought it would be. I'm happy enough, but somehow imagine more glamour and money, etc., etc., etc. It's probably just the crazy imagination of being a kid. Story 59. In preschool, I remember this and my parents all bring it up, I thought jobs all paid the same. So when all my classmates said what they wanted to be when they grew up, doctors, pilots, firefighters, etc., I proudly said pizza man. I love pizza, and being around something you love and getting money for it just seems so right. Story 60. I wanted to be an author, only thing I ever wanted to be when I grew up. I work customer service, but I have gotten published, and I'm working on getting more of my stuff out there. So I have halfway accomplished what I wanted. It's just not a full-time gig at the moment. Story 61. I don't remember. I think I liked the idea of being an interpreter for a while. I totally stumbled into teaching, but now I really love it. I got diagnosed with ADHD when I was 25, and now I get to teach a study skills class. So basically, I get to teach kids all I had to learn the hard way. It makes me feel incredibly proud and helpful. As a bonus, all the kids with ADHD love me because they're like, oh yes, he's one of us, so that's also rewarding. Story 62. I wanted to be a photojournalist so I could travel the world and capture its beauty and share it with the world. Now, I only travel for fun, still taking in the world's beauty though. For work, I reunite people with their loved ones. It's rewarding, but very draining emotionally and physically. Story 63. I wanted to be a teacher. Growing up, I didn't have the best life. A few of my teachers knew this, and they showed me the love and support I needed. I will never forget them. I ended up being a personal aid worker for kids with special needs. I enjoyed it a lot, but I somehow ended up starting my own business and doing construction. I'm very happy with what I do. Story 64. I always loved trains. Thought they were fantastic. My uncles work for the railroad. One just retired, and it was a driving force for the foundation. I thought it'd be cool as hell to operate freight train as a locomotive engineer. After working so hard to get here, I'm both a qualified conductor and locomotive engineer. The day I qualified, I cried. It was a very hard-earned qualification and one I'm very thankful for. I'm also a conductor. I make great money, provides a great living for my family, and it's great to run a train. Story 65. Dream, teacher or veterinarian. Then realize I can't see animals sick or hurt without crying, but realized I could help kids. Job. Currently working with children with trauma and aggressive behaviors in the school setting, while doing school part-time to get my master's of education to become the teacher I've always wanted to be. Story 66. My dream job as a child was to be a teacher of the deaf. In 5th grade, a friend did an oral report on Helen Keller and showed us sign language. This was in the 70s, so ASL was not well known at all, but I was so intrigued. I followed my dream and became a teacher of the deaf. It was wonderful, until I had to put my kids into daycare. My second dream job was to be a stay-at-home mom, and I did that too. Story 67. As a kid teaching karate, teenager rock star, I settled on auto repair, worked 10 years in a dealership and hated it, so right now I'm doing nothing. Current interests include music production and psychology, but really I just want to do something easy and part-time and live in a van down by the river. Story 68. Cartoonist illustrator. Then I discovered playing music at 14. Was a working musician, gigging and touring and recording in bands for 15 years, then a DJ for 10. Was ace. Then wanted to start a family. Am now in project management. Weirdly, a lot of transferable skills. Story 69. This is a terrible dream, but it was mine. We had to pick a career and plan our lives based on our salary, average reported to the students. I believe I was in 7th grade at the time. Believe it or not, I wanted to be a secretary and live in a trailer of all things. I actually became a nurse that can type 100 WPM. I call it a compromise. I live in a house, but yep, I have lived in a trailer before. Story 70. When I was a 5-yo, I wanted to drive a garbage truck. Then at 7-yo, I wanted to create video games. So I studied software development. I suck at making anything related to video games, so now I make accountant software. It sucks ass, but keeps me away of being a homeless crack whore, I guess, so yay. Story 71, child actor, child model, and a jet fighter pilot astronaut kind of guy. I became the piece of people, made sure I became, so I would be beaten less, and so people would stop killing my pets and hurting my parents. The physical abuse continued, though, especially in my sleep. I just kind of wake up to someone beating me or punching me. It's happened most of my life. Story 72, paleontologist. I loved all prehistoric animals and the science around their discoveries as a kid. Fell out of love later in life. Now I've taken up the hobby again as a grown adult. Currently doing nothing, not a thing, unemployed, never studied in the field. Completely missed the boat on that one. Story 73, to help people in some capacity. I had a lot of dream jobs as a kid: archaeologist, tour guide, doctor, teacher, actress, FBI agent, lawyer, law guardian, chef. Today, I am a school-based counselor. I'm a teacher in some ways. I give tours to new students. I give kids a Band-Aid or refer them to the nurse if they're not feeling well or self-harm to check for infection after we do a risk assessment. I cook at home a lot for fun. I work with the police to help families with housing and safety situations. I advocate for the students. I have performed during staff versus student events. So I've basically incorporated all of my dreams jobs into my role, currently except for archaeologist. Thought Indo have some students that live ancient history, so we talk about it sometimes. Story 74. I wanted to become the next pop sensation, however I can't sing at all, let alone dance, lol. So instead, I wanted to then become something in art, as I love to draw and create things on the computer. So I studied and got my BA in graphic design. I worked in the field for about 6 years, and I still do it on the side. However, greedy companies, which is almost everyone, doesn't pay graphic designers well, and some hardly have any other perks. Luckily in NY, employers have to provide health insurance. Anyway, I got laid off from one of the companies I worked for due to them wanting a cheaper designer, so they hired someone from another country. I was devastated, as I'd never been fired or laid off before. So now I have a civil service job working in law enforcement, which is another passion of mine. I have a steady salary with salary increases and many other health benefits and a pension when I retire. I'm set. Story 75. As a child, my dream job changed constantly. One day, I wanted to be an astronaut exploring the stars, and the next, a chef creating delicious meals. Now, I'm in a completely different field, doing something I hadn't imagined back then. It's funny how life takes unexpected turns, but I've come to enjoy the journey and the opportunities I've had along the way. Story 75. As a child, I wanted to be an interpreter. I now float around the government as a contractor doing FOIA work. It's still a translation occupation of sorts, ferrying knowledge and materials and understanding and records from one entity to another in a legally appropriate way. So I think I made out all right for myself in the end. Story 76. When I was young, I really wanted to be an artist and an astronaut at the same time. I now work as a technical manager at a theater, so I do the fun math while being super creative all the time. I teach young kids about technical theater. Story 77. As a child, veterinarian. Now, dog bather. I was incorrect to assume I would outgrow my fear of needles. I did not. For me to get my own blood drawn, I have to be given like a labradoodle. Thankfully, I'm going for my animal sciences degree and hoping along the way I'll find the path for me. Story 78. Engineer, specifically mechanical or aerospace. Enrolled in an engineering program at a state university, was a pretty good student. I knew more than a handful of people that changed majors because they couldn't handle the courses or just realized it wasn't what they wanted. Enough of them switched to IT that it ended up being kind of a running joke that it was ever engineering students' backup major. I ended up dropping out for very stupid reasons after 2 years, ed around working a couple really jobs for the next decade or so, then went back to school and got my associate's degree in computer information systems. Now I work in IT. Story 79. It was never just one thing, but an author was probably the most consistent. I loved the idea of doing anything creative TBH. I had other interests and inclinations, but this was one of the things most people knew about me in school. It was even one of the comments my classmates wrote about me. My HS English teacher asked me some years later if I had pursued literature. I had not. I went to law school. Story 80. For as long as I can remember, I wanted to drive a semi. Parents insisted I would get my degree, so I got my degree in history. Turns out I really like research. After school, my uncle-in-law taught he how to drive semi, and I've been a driver for 20 years now. I use my degree help with investing. Dig deep enough, and our past is a very good predictor of the future. Story 81. Then hip-hop dancer on MTV, followed up by working in advertising in a big city. Now, instructional designer who does live in a big city and lets my hip-hop moves embarrass my child during our living room dance parties. Next theme, what do you consider examples of healthy masculinity? Story 1. As a dude who likes some stereotypical masculine things, I train MMA and love it, but who also has a lot of stereotypical feminine characteristics. I teach elementary school, am very nurturing, am very emotive, and am I sap? I have some thoughts on this. The idea of the manly man as a great bully and jerk really bothers me, and I think that's totally false. It's nearly always a consequence of insecurity, in my opinion. Being masculine to me means having the strength to stand on your values and to stand for those you care about, even and especially when it's hard to do so. It's about being stalwart and unflappably dependable when it counts, even when there is a cost to doing so. All these so-called alphas who have to be the toughest guy in the room are all a bunch of SEMO. If your only value is how many men think you're better or more manly than they are, then you're not a man at all to me. You have no substance of your own on which to stand. TLDR. Masculinity is the ability to stand for what's right, and those who can't stand for themselves and to put yourself on the line for those things. It has little to do with the ability to bully others. Thank you for the reward, fellow Redditor. Story 2. I don't think you can give specific examples, just encouraging men to be okay with themselves instead of chasing this ideal image of a man. It's okay if you want to dance, little homie. Some of the greatest dancers of all time were men that looked just like you. Story 3. Being a good person, being honest, honoring commitments, being able to withhold your own emotional reactions temporarily to support others. And also women can also behave that way. Just be a good and honest person. Masculinity has just a very, very, very tiny bit to do with it. Story 4. I think the movie Gladiator displays a very admirable version of masculinity. Maximus is undoubtedly the pinnacle of masculinity with his fighting skills and leadership qualities and the way he talks and presents himself. But he is most importantly a man who you can always trust to do the right thing. Even when he loses everything and faces death on multiple occasions, he doesn't break, and you don't lose faith in him. Story 5. I eat the butt end of the bread because nobody wants it. I sleep on the floor when the hotel doesn't have the accommodations we thought they had, so my kid gets a bed. I do the chores nobody wants to do. I put money in my retirement plan and investments instead of having a cool car. To me, I'm the most masculine when I do the things my family needs or wants. Also, crying about it or showcasing all you do for people or complaining about it is the opposite of masculine. Story 6. Maybe this is controversial and will get criticized as being too woke, But I don't think it's healthy to divide actions and personality traits into masculine and feminine full stop. Obviously, some ways of doing it are better than others, but I don't think there's any reason to believe either gender needs to predominate in any domain. Men can be nurturing and caring and empathetic. Women can fix things and be goofy and playful and fun. None of this should be seen as people stepping out of their gender roles because the roles just shouldn't be there. Story 7. There is something about these questions I distrust, particularly when they're accompanied by the message, both implicit and explicit, that masculinity itself is something to be controlled and subdued. The message that invariably prevails in the top comments of these posts is that masculinity, in its natural state, is flawed or something to be contained, if not eradicated and replaced by docility and passivity. The question everyone needs to ask, however, is not how masculinity can be healthier, but why this topic remains so heavily debated, while its accompanying messages to men about what healthy masculinity is are so aggressively pushed. Story 8. Uncle Iroh from Avatar did a lot of questionable things in his past, but after losing his son learns from his errors and gently guides his nephew into becoming the type of man who would earn the love of his people, rather than force it to create hope for the future. Also, I love Uncle Phil from The Fresh Prince, stern and strict with his goofy nephew, but stepping up and being the father figure he needed and sympathized with his mistakes rather than scold him when necessary. Story 9. I think the classical idea of masculinity and being a man was predicated on the ability to utilize their natural strength and a testosterone to increase the chances of their tribe/family survival, being able to fight, being aggressive in suitable situations, lifting heavy things, running fast, protecting your family from enemies, hunting effectively, etc. We live in a society today in the West that requires different things today. We have organizations and infrastructure and systems designed to reduce danger and provide solutions that historically requires more independent male patriarchs to accomplish. It also depends on where in the West you live, rural or more urban. I think the issue here is one of conflation. It is less important to ask, what does it mean to be a good man, and more important to ask, what does it mean to be a good person? To be a good person can be applied anywhere in the world at any time effectively, and then we don't concern ourselves with the practical details. Story 10, The Poem If by Rudyard Kipling. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too, if you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good, nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster, and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to, broken and stoop and build them up with worn-out tools, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings, nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you, but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son. Story 11. I feel protective of absolute strangers. I don't even consider if they need protected. If I see someone struggling, I immediately want to help. That isn't to say I do, but it is instinctual for me to help anybody, not even just people, for no other reason than I'm pretty sure I can. Is that masculine? I know what makes me feel masculine, but it differs from person to person. Story 12. My husband is a blue-collar man, machine shop welder who grew up on a farm. He is about as masculine as they come in all the traditional ways. However, he also shifted his work schedule to accommodate taking our kids to school/childcare every morning so that he can spend more time with them and my day can go more smoothly. Paints our daughter's nails every weekend, but also takes her to the shop when she wants to join him and his buddies while they work on their project cars. Hugs and kisses our son and tells him how much he loves him, even though he rarely got that from his dad growing up. Takes pride in protecting and providing for our family, but also paid my way through grad school and has supported me in every step of my career. Treats my younger sisters as his own and has been their first call, after our dad, when they need help for the past 15 years. Shares the mental load in all ways.